There is a plant sitting in millions of homes right now. Most people walk past it every day without a second thought. It sits quietly on windowsills, in cracked clay pots, in forgotten corners of gardens, and almost no one knows what happens when it blooms. Here is what makes that strange. This plant survived 3 continents. It outlasted empires. Ancient physicians wrote about it in languages that no longer exist. Egyptian queens used it as their most guarded beauty secret. African healers called it the plant that never dies. And yet, the one moment that reveals everything about this plant, its bloom, goes almost completely unnoticed. Scientists will tell you it blooms when stressed, when it feels threatened, when survival itself is at stake. That is not an accident. Welcome to Flora Craft Garden, where we uncover the knowledge that was buried, dismissed, or quietly set aside. The systems that kept civilizations alive for thousands of years before the modern world told you they were no longer necessary. Today, we are going inside the story of aloe vera. Not the ingredient on the back of a shampoo bottle, not the green gel in a plastic tube at the pharmacy. The real plant, its ancient life, its hidden intelligence, and the one moment in its existence that almost nobody has ever stopped to understand: the bloom. Go back 4,000 years. You are standing in the Nile Delta. The air is thick with heat and river mud. Around you, healers, men and women who spent their entire lives studying plants, are tending to something they called the plant of immortality. Not because it made you live forever, but because it refused to die. They observed it carefully. They noticed it could go months without water and still hold life inside its leaves. They noticed that when its thick skin was cut open, a clear gel poured out that could stop a wound from festering, that could calm a burn when nothing else would, that could soothe cracked, sun-scorched skin overnight. They did not just use it, they revered it. Cleopatra, one of the most calculated and intelligent rulers the ancient world ever produced, reportedly incorporated aloe gel into her daily bathing and skincare rituals. This was not vanity. In that era, your appearance was power. Your skin was your authority. She understood something that most modern cosmetic companies spend billions trying to recreate in a laboratory. The plant already had the answer. Egyptian records, some dating back to 1500 BCE, reference aloe vera in formulations for burns, infections, and skin disorders. The Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents ever discovered, lists aloe as a core remedy. But Egypt was only the beginning. Move eastward into Arabia, into the ancient spice trade networks that connected the known world. Arab traders carried aloe across desert routes. They knew its value. A plant that could survive weeks without water and still heal a wound, that was worth more than gold in the dry lands between the Mediterranean and the Indian subcontinent. By the time it reached ancient India, Ayurvedic physicians had already built an entire system of use around it. They called it Kumari, meaning young girl or full of youth. They believed it carried a kind of vital energy that no other plant possessed. In their texts, they described it as a remedy for digestive fire, the internal system that processes not just food, but experience. They used it for liver complaints, for skin conditions, for what we would today call inflammation. They noticed something else, too, something that took thousands of years for modern science to begin explaining. The plant seemed to know when it was being used. When leaves were harvested consistently, it grew back stronger. When it was ignored, it waited, patient, still, storing energy for a moment that had not yet arrived. That moment was the bloom. Here is what science now understands about why aloe vera blooms, and why it matters more than most people realize. Aloe vera is what botanists call a succulent monocarp in its flowering cycle. But strip away the terminology, and what you find is something almost elegant in its simplicity. The plant blooms when it decides that conditions are right to pass something forward. It spends years, sometimes a decade or more, storing energy inside its thick, water-heavy leaves, silently accumulating, photosynthesizing, building its internal reserves. And then, when the conditions shift, when there is enough light, enough warmth, enough time, it sends up a tall flowering spike, sometimes nearly a meter tall, covered in tubular orange, yellow, or red flowers. And those flowers do something specific. They attract pollinators that nothing else in the dry landscape can feed. Sunbirds, certain species of bees, insects that have co-evolved with the plant over millions of years. This is not random. This is a communication system built into the plant's biology over millions of adaptation. The gel inside the leaves, the part humans have used for millennia, contains over 75 active compounds, vitamins, minerals, enzymes that the human gut recognizes almost instantly, polysaccharides that modern immunologists are still working to fully understand. One compound in particular, asamanin, has drawn serious scientific interest for its apparent ability to support immune cell function. Early research suggests it may help the body recognize and respond to abnormal cells more efficiently. The research is ongoing, but the direction is striking. What the ancients called the plant of immortality, modern science is only now beginning to decode. By the time European explorers reached the Americas in the 15th and 16th centuries, aloe vera had already traveled ahead of them. Arab traders, Indian merchants, African healers crossing with early migration routes. The plant moved with human civilization because human civilization could not seem to function without it. Spanish missionaries brought it formally to the Caribbean and then into Central America. Indigenous communities in the Americas, who had their own remarkable plant knowledge, incorporated it quickly, recognizing something familiar in its structure, even if the specific species was new to them. In West Africa, aloe species had been used for centuries. Hunters reportedly rubbed the gel on their bodies before moving through the bush, not only for protection from insects and heat, but because they believed the plant reduced their scent, gave them something close to invisibility in the landscape. In Southeast Asia, it became part of traditional cooking. The inner gel, scooped clean of the bitter yellow latex layer underneath the skin, was added to drinks and desserts. The digestive benefits observed by Ayurvedic physicians thousands of years earlier were independently confirmed by cultures that had never read a Sanskrit text. This is the part of the story that most people skip over. The same discovery, made independently across dozens of cultures that never spoke to each other. That is not coincidence. That is evidence. Then, something changed. It did not happen all at once. It rarely does. The shifts that matter most in history tend to move quietly, beneath the surface, disguised as progress. In the mid-20th century, as industrial manufacturing began to dominate consumer goods, companies started producing topical creams and gels for burns, skin conditions, and wound care. These products were synthetic. They were scalable. They could be produced in enormous quantities, bottled, branded, and sold. Aloe vera, the whole plant grown in someone's garden with no packaging, no middleman, no profit margin, did not fit into that model. What happened next was subtle, but if you look at the history of consumer health products between the 1950s and 1980s, a pattern emerges. Natural remedies that had functioned for centuries began to be categorized differently. Regulations were written that made it increasingly difficult to make health claims about plants. Marketing for pharmaceutical alternatives grew louder. The vocabulary around plant medicine shifted from remedy to folk cure, from treatment to unproven. This is not a conspiracy. It is economics. It is the logic of industries protecting their markets. But the effect was real.